I have this need for powdered ingredients, like powdered charcoal and powdered clay and stuff like that. The problem is that I've burned up a couple of coffee grinders trying to make powdered ingredients, so what I really want is a ball mill. Problem is that ball mills are incredibly expensive. They're thousands of dollars. Here's a couple of videos I can show you online where people have made their own ball mills of various types. What I did was I went on eBay and I bought this thing for about a third of its retail value. And then I bought these. Now I have to tell you that 50 half-inch ball bearings sounded a lot more impressive than it actually is. But I'll go ahead and give these a shot. As an FYI, ball bearings are expensive, but ammunition for a slingshot is inexpensive. You can get 100 of these for about $6 as opposed to, I think I paid $17 or something like that for these 50. So I'm probably going to get some more balls, maybe get a couple of varying sizes, but I might as well at least try my ball mill and see if I can make it do something. I have a need for crushed borosilicate glass in order to make crucibles and more clay. And you remember my borosilicate's contaminated by the rock that I used to break the glass. So it's going to be my first victim for this. We'll put it in and see what it does. Kind of have to leave it in for a day or two. Now let's just see what happens with that. It's a small amount of glass and a small amount of balls, and then we'll ramp it up from there. My other thought was to use charcoal, but I actually need this glass, so we'll try that. My understanding is that one of the requirements for using a ball mill is earplugs. Let's see what happens when I put this thing in there. I'm also hoping the weight will cause it to not jiggle around quite so much. So. That's unimpressive. We'll let it go for a day, see what it does. I've been spinning my trial ball mill for 3 days. Remember, I put some of this broken glass in it and a bunch of these. Let's see what we got. That's gross. So the first thing to note is that I saved one ball. It looks like broken glass knows how to abrade a ball bearing. So you may or may not recall that my initial glass product was made by beating that glass between two rocks. And then this stuff is what I sifted out of this stuff. So this stuff is the stuff that was left behind. So the question is, after this has been in here for 3 days, what happens when I sift it? So let's take a look. So I guess my first conclusion is that I did break the glass up, because there's no way that's all just stuff off of the balls. But I would also say that there's plenty of stuff that didn't break. And one of the reasons I'm going to say that is these things only weigh about 6 grams a piece. They're just not very heavy. Now these things are a little bit of a different matter. These things have a diameter of 1 inch. And as you recall, the volume of a sphere goes up with the cube of the radius. So a 1-inch sphere has 8 times the mass of a 1/2-inch sphere. And these things are just obviously much more solid. So what we'll do is add these things, and then we'll return the thing to the spinner and let it go for a while and see if that does a better job of breaking up. And oh, by the way, FYI, I have some 1 3/8 inch diameter spheres coming too. And when they get here, I'll put them in as well. I'm struck by the color of this ground up glass. By the way, it's extremely fluffy. It doesn't feel anything like this stuff. This stuff is kind of gritty and sandy, and this stuff is just very fluffy. I don't know if it matters that all that powdered steel is in there, but I probably will play around and see if I can get some of it out, because why not? And so let's try this. I mean, reminiscent of the, look at that, reminiscent of the dry technique. Maybe it's all powdered steel. I'm not seeing any glass in there. It's possible what I have just learned is that I can't use steel balls to crush glass. But let's put the bigger balls on and see if they'll do it. That may be all steel. I wonder what that stuff is. Have to look at it under the microscope. So on the left, through the wonders of a phone and a laser pointer lens, you can see the stuff that's coming out of the ball mill. It's just such an incredibly fine powder. And on the right is the glass that I busted up with a rock, which doesn't look anything like this stuff. A very odd juxtaposition. This stuff just doesn't look like busted up glass really at all. It occurs to me that before I set this thing going, I should get a weight, because it's certainly possible that if I'm really losing iron or steel off the surface of these balls, I'll be able to tell because they're going to get lighter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 473 grams in 7 balls. So we're looking at 65-ish grams. I'll figure it out closer later. Let's go ahead and put it in. 473.5 grams on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 balls. See you in 3 days. Let's take a look at my second run. 72 hours of trying to ball mill borosilicate glass, i.e. Pyrex. Bigger balls this time. Well, I can tell you right now, we all know what that gray powder is, because I looked at it once after the last time I produced it, and that is not ground glass. That is ground steel balls. Finely ground steel balls. So I think we know we're not going to do any more ball milling with borosilicate glass, because all I get is ground ball, not ground glass. I mean, I've got a braided glass, but it ain't ground glass. Now, I'm sure that there's actually some finely ground glass in there, because there's just not enough of the small pieces of glass left in this thing that some of it didn't get ground down, but clearly the balls are coming out on the worst side of this deal. Let's see what 7 of these things weigh now. 473.54 grams, so we'll compare that to the pre-ground weight and see what we get. We're going to call this my quantitative test of whatever's coming out of this mill, because I'm pretty sure I've determined it's probably not going to be steel dust, because I just don't think the balls are losing enough weight for that to be the cause. We'll see in a minute. Okay, so you can see the difference. This was run for 48 hours and this was run for 72. Clearly not as contaminated with steel. Let's see if this stuff is magnetic. Not nearly as magnetic as the other stuff, so I guess this stuff probably is glass. Let's see how much everything weighs. There's 473 grams for 7 balls, same weight. There's another 473. They're reproducible. So it's obvious this is glass powder. It can't be anything else. It's just incredibly finely divided, which is good. I wanted it incredibly finely divided, but I just didn't recognize what the hell it was. So I'll use that for making more crucibles. There's the significant color difference. All set to go. I'll put the rest of this glass back in. I got to fix my ball mill slash rock tumbler. I think I made the thing too heavy and I broke it. Let's take a look at my last run in the ball mill. This was my attempt to reduce the rest of the glassed powder. It really will produce an incredibly fine glass powder. It doesn't really appear to be able to break up the big chunks, but I guess if you reduce them to small chunks, it will take them apart. So I'm going to try making some charcoal powder before we wrap up this episode. That's for my crucibles. It's a lot of very fine powder. I can't complain about that stuff. So I'm going to try making some charcoal powder. I've got some need for charcoal powder, which I will explain later. So I'm going to call this experiment a success. I thought it was being incredibly unique and interesting, but it turns out a lot of people have used rock tumblers as ball mills. My second run of charcoal, that's only a few hours, and it produces just lovely charcoal dust, just lovely. Very fine grained. I haven't snuffed a single coffee grinder. I've got a lot of glass, which is good because I'm going to be making a lot of clay crucibles. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Plus, I have to tell you, I've got these lovely balls. They're really almost like little pearls now. They're just really quite attractive. So I'm going to call this episode a wrap. I'll tell you, I have need for many different kinds of powdered materials, and it looks like I now have a source for those powdered materials. So I know that sounds maybe just a little bit mysterious, but take my word for it. You'll be seeing more of the ball mill. Please feel free to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Go out there and try putting your balls in powder and have a nice day.